Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers preview. It felt weird. I was here 2 weeks ago and then I disappeared. I saw there were some YouTube comments like, is Jeff really back or is that just a one-time thing? No, I'm back. I'm on vacation. Officially back with Behind the Steel Curtain. Couldn't be happier. And joining me is Bryan Anthony Davis, Dave Schofield, who has a new nickname, which we'll unveil later when he joins us, he's having technical difficulty, so we're going to start the show with the dynamic duo. Bryan, what's going on?
Not too much, Jeff. So glad to have you back. After a week off, I was lost without you. And okay, I can't even say that with a straight face. Nah, it's when here and now the threesome's back together again. So just like McDonald's, but I'm loving it.
Well, no, I mean, this is a good segue. And the fact that we're loving something, I think that I'm really loving the new platform and the new Behind the Steel Curtain platform across the board. And that's our podcast. I know a lot of people that are right now watching live on YouTube are like, yes, we love the YouTube shows and we love the YouTube audience and we love the YouTube shows as well. But we've added so much more content that's not on YouTube that I think is really good. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, we've really worked hard on the morning show. I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Bryan does Tuesday. Dave does Thursday. I've been doing the training camp recaps. Like, we're really trying to evolve this platform. Bryan, you've been happy with it, right?
Oh, I have been thrilled with it. And I got to tell you, our downloads are like crazy. They need to be crazier. So keep on clicking those downloads on any platform. I mean, your favorite platform or even your least favorite platform. As long as it's a platform, go ahead, check us out. We're on everything. I think there's something called Steve's internet podcast platform. There's not, but if there was, we'd be on it because BTSC is becoming everywhere. So we really appreciate all of you checking us out. Remember, you can't watch the YouTube shows when you're in your car because you're gonna wreck, and you don't want to blame that. I don't want that on my conscience that you're wrecking because I look this darn good. So really, we take these YouTube shows and we put them on the podcast platform. You can listen to them too. So make sure you do that. I'm Kathy Ford saying I keep meaning to try it out for my 108-mile route commute. That is wow. Come
on, Kathy, what are you doing?
Well, Kathy's in Kansas. Nothing's down the road, but basically, we're really glad to have you on. We've pretty much quadrupled our content on what we're putting out, and we're really proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that I'm listening to the morning shows and it was Jeff's idea to put together the morning shows with the Jerry Cherry Band coming up as our house band. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, coming in and out of the breaks, they're rocking. Yeah. And the ones that Dave was just telling me today, he's like, man, I just listened to my Stat Geek show again. He said, I just love hearing the music coming in and out. I mean, really, it's something special. Now that Jeff has added the training camp reports, look, there is not a lot of news out there. So if we could find it, we're going to put it out to you. And people are relying on those training camp reports. So Jeff, fantastic job. I appreciate that. Then we had the opportunity to have the Ike Taylor interview today. And Ryan O'Toole just mentioned, loved the interview with Ike today. And we've been chasing him for 3 months. And
we had that impromptu show yesterday because he didn't show up. I was ticked off.
Yeah, but you know what? Things happen. And
it turned out good. I listened, it was good. Yeah.
Being one of the best interviews I've ever had. So I really, boy, does he know the team inside and out. I got to tell you that. So no, really happy with the new podcast platform. But what I'm happiest about the most, Jeff, is when I'm looking at the screen here and I'm seeing Shield 91 and Kathy and Ryan O'Toole and Tyler and Tom and anyone else that's on the screen. When I see these names out there, this is our BTSC family, and they're the ones that are with us through thick and thin. We want to add more to you. There's so much love for BTSC to give. So keep on coming in. Tell your friends about it. Keep on adding your friends. We want to have a huge community. And I tell you what, I'm going to remember all your names.
There you go. That's good. Well, let's start off with some news. We're going to talk about the Ike Taylor interview because I want to ask you about some of the answers that he gave. But still, let's talk about some news. So the Steelers did not, this is recorded on Thursday. The Steelers did not practice today. I think that works out well because it's kind of like a day to decompress. Because for a while there, it's the fast and the furious in terms of news. And for guys like Dave and myself that are writing a ton, you have interview after interview after interview, training camp practice, Mike Tomlin, and then sometimes another interview. Now, Bryan, I know you keep tabs on everything, whether it's, just glancing through articles or whatnot. Is there any player in particular that you've heard from reporters that are there in the pool or not that you're like, this guy's impressing me so far? But before we get to your answer, I want to welcome David Wanghammer Schofield to the show. That's his middle name, people. I hope you realize that. His middle name is actually Wanghammer. I don't know if it's a family name, if it's German or what, but if it's Von Hammer or what we call him.
I thought it was Davidson. Wanghammer.
David Wanghammer. So what's up, Wanghammer? How you doing?
Hey, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties here. One of my outlets on my computer just went, so I couldn't figure out why things weren't working. So had to bypass some stuff, but here I am. It's going. I guess I am now the Wanghammer, and I'll roll with that. But
hey,
I was
it's
listening.
better than being a Wang Harbor.
Yeah,
or Wang Harbaugh.
Okay.
Yeah, Wang Harbaugh.
All right, well, let's get back to the question at hand. And that was, Bryan, is there any player that has impressed you? Obviously, it's training camp. They just put on the pads this week, but still, from what you've heard from camp, is there anyone that you're like, oh, I'm glad I'm hearing this player's name?
There's two guys, and one, I've got to do a shout out to Donald Nolan because Donald Nolan and I are Ryan Switzer buddies. And Ryan Switzer has caught a few. I believe he's had 2 touchdowns in the first couple of days of camp each day. He's looked pretty good. I know he has a great rapport with Ben. I hear everything about him being Mr. Electronic Football guy and everything you want, but that guy has a lot of heart and he can do a lot of things. Like I said, if it's 3rd and 2, you can get him for 3 as long as he sets up outside the line of scrimmage. So I'm pretty excited about him. The other guy I'm excited for is John Trent. Just stole my thunder, Benny Snell. Benny Snell football. And I was just writing a little bit about Benny Snell. I don't want to give it up, but in the BTSC question of the week, I'm thinking Benny Snell is my breakout guy this year. So I really think that's going to happen, and he's impressing already. He had 3.9 yards per carry last year. He's a lot more powerful and a lot faster than you think. So Benny Snell right now and Ryan Switzer, the SNS boys, I'm telling you, those are the guys that are impressive.
He lost 12 pounds, and people might say, yeah, it's 12 pounds. For an elite athlete, 12 pounds is significant. They're saying he looks really good. Dave, what about you? You've obviously covered the team as close as I have. Is there any player other than Switzer or Snell that have you been like, I'm glad I'm hearing this?
Well, I have to say this first is that, Bryan, you have to get in line because I've been on the Benny Snell train since January about everything with him.
He has. You have.
And so that's all right. Jump on the train. There's lots of room. Let's do this. So
I've never been off the Benny Snell train, though, Dave.
Yes, but I've been on that train for a while. I'll do like Bryan. I'll throw out 2 names. Of course, you got to love it. You're always focused on rookies, but we weren't really going to focus on rookies this year. But man, when Joe Hayden comes out with the praise that he's had for Chase Claypool and the stuff that other people have said and stuff that we've been reported on about him, that's one to get really excited about, even if it's a guy that you're not expecting much out of early in the season as he gets acclimated. Just nice to know that he might be ready sooner than we think. Then the other one that is I've heard a lot of buzz about is one UG3, Ulysses Gilbert III, that there's been a lot of talk about him and plays that he's been making on the field, that he's been included with some of the reports. So those are the 2 I'm going to go with.
Those are good. UG3 was one I was going to say, because the fact that the Steelers did not address inside linebacker at all, and that means that they must really trust him. And there's a guy they hardly played. And I know that Mike Tomlin was asked about him in one of his post-practice press conferences, and he said, look, he's still basically a rookie because he hardly played last year. But at the same time, they must have a lot of faith in his capabilities because I know that on my podcast that's running Friday morning, I was asked, I did a little Q&A from Twitter, and someone asked about Vince Williams' coverage, which is not good. UG3 is that guy that they could be using in that sub package instead. They must trust him a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to go with, and this is going to sound simple, but how about Ben Roethlisberger? We had been waiting how long for him to actually throw more than one pass, or some video of him at Duquesne throwing a pass to some unknown receiver. Dave and I are scouring video of a Twitter video. Who is that? Who's that guy in the background? Who's all there? I mean, now we have reporters like Mark Cabali of The Athletic. And by the way, if you don't follow these reporters, Mark Cabali is not one to just dish out praise willy-nilly. I think he's one of the more pessimistic guys in terms of the pool of reporters. And he said that he's never seen Roethlisberger more accurate. He is looking really, really strong, really good. You hear comments from Ryan Switzer and Vance McDonald, all these players that are saying he is looking every bit of the part and back. So it's, for me, Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, yeah, it's silly because I'm a big Ben Roethlisberger fan, but at the same time, now let me ask you this, because this is going to lead to my second one. There was a skirmish in practice the other day between a Mr. TJ Watt and a Mr. Zach Banner. Now, Dave, I'm going to ask you first because you were a coach and you played. Knowing those two and their situations heading into this season, how do you, in your mind, figure out, say, hey, this is probably what happened and why these two kind of extended the repetition? I think they called it some type of disagreement or something like that. But Dave, it's a training camp fight. It's a pushing and shoving. It's a pass rushing drill. What is your guess? Because I have an idea, but I want to hear what you think.
All right. Well, to premise, you have to realize, if you haven't caught it from, oh my goodness, how many weeks ago has it been now, Bryan?
It was about a month ago. Yeah. And I know exactly where you're going. It was about 5 weeks ago.
With our interview with Zach Banner, is that he said that he's churned out some of his best reps ever in practice going up against TJ Watt. And I can't remember, Bryan might have to remember who told him that, said to him, hey, you need to go every play like you're going against TJ.
I think it was Joe Hayden.
Yeah, it was somebody like that said, this is who you need, this is what you need to do. The way you bring it against TJ, you need to bring it like that every play. So hearing this does not really surprise me. I think it's one of those things that Banner's trying to show what he can do. And if what he has to do is, let's say maybe he gets the best of Watt on a play, even if it's something like TJ does something, he gets tripped up and ends up on the ground. Knowing Banner, showing that he's not going to let him get up and do something, he's going to lay on him. And then TJ's not going to like that he's laying on him in practice, because there's no reason to do that in practice. But, when a guy's trying to earn that spot, you got to go a little bit harder and take it a little bit longer, especially against that superstar, because if he gets up and makes a play when you thought you had him beat, then it's going to look bad on you. So he's got to make sure.
Bryan,
if you were to take a guess as to what you think happened?
Dave is absolutely correct, because, I mean, to go back to that interview as well, one of the things that he was talking about was the fact not only does he have his best repetitions, but he has more respect for TJ Watt than almost anybody on the team. And a little bit of that interview was him talking about how he was robbed for Defensive Player of the Year last year. He has great respect for TJ Watt. He is a man, when you are out there in August, usually it's late July, but in late August now, you're fighting, and that it's you or another guy that's going to be having that right tackle position. And that's another guy that he is great friends with. He's great friends with Chooks as well. But when it's for your job and he's playing for a contract, remember, he only signed a 1-year deal earlier this year. So he took a gamble on himself, and he's doing everything he can to get that starting position, because it all adds up in the checkbook come 2021 in March or April for him to get either the starting job here, more money here, or a big free agent deal elsewhere.
To me, it kind of seemed like two players in completely different points of their careers heading into this training camp. Watt has nothing to prove. I mean, literally, they're going to back up the Brinks truck to pay him after his fifth year option, which has already been picked up. And like you just said, Bryan, Zach Banner is playing for his career right now. I mean, if he doesn't win this battle against Chuks Okorafor and is the starting right tackle for the Steelers, let's say they would have to bump Matt Filer back to tackle because neither of them are good enough and they have to put Wisniewski at guard. How damning is that as a player? Yeah. He's basically then going to be relegated to backup duty, swing tackle duty, or tight end eligible duty for possibly the rest of his career. So I could see it where he's playing balls to the wall, as we used to call it, as when I was coaching and things like that. And there's another guy that's saying, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I can see TJ Watt like, man, you need to back up. You need to take it easy a little bit. And maybe that's, I don't blame anyone. I don't think it was malicious. You talked about Banner talking glowingly about TJ, and I listened to that interview and he did. But you notice we're not hearing about Okorafor. And we are hearing about Banner, even if it's just because of a skirmish. I'm anxious to see what this second week has to do. We're getting down to crunch time. We really are getting down to crunch time, and to see who wins some of these battles. Are you all disappointed as I am? And I can't believe I'm going to say this, that there's no preseason games.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I beat you to it. Did you watch the Scobro show? I'm so excited and I'm so bummed. I want my preseason football. I don't care if I'm watching Leo Lewis at linebacker. Don't really care. I know all the guys' names. I want to see him go. Sorry, Bryan.
Having the position that we have, fellas, we knew who Duck Hodges was way before anybody else did last year, because we're scratching and clawing for material usually in May and June. And we're highlighting these guys. We knew all about Tuzar Skipper because he was someone new to talk about. He wasn't an originally undrafted free agent. He and Duck came in last year, and they had an opportunity to get a contract in rookie minicamp. So when it came to preseason, and when you're in quarter 3 and 4, and these names that you don't know, we knew them because we had to know them. And it's nice to watch these guys, and we're able to talk about guys like Deontay Spencer and me to get bent all out of shape when he gets cut and Denver picks him up.
Frank Webb.
Yeah, Frank Webb. I mean, gosh, but anyway,
you got him. He's not even on the Steelers anymore. I'm missing
the heck out of preseason football. I don't miss the games. I mean, I don't miss them when they're on, but I'm missing the heck out of them right now. And I really wish they were here, but we got to have it now, September 14th, though.
Can I say something about preseason?
Sure.
The one thing that's different about the preseason versus the regular season when it comes to me and watching NFL football is I'm only watching the Steelers when it comes to preseason.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about any other NFL team in the preseason. I don't know who the 79th guy is on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I don't care. But I'm watching every second of the Steelers that I can because I know everything's going on there. Now, come regular season, I don't care which team it is. I'm watching them. Every game. Yeah. I can.
And by the way, for me, the NFL is the only sport that I do that. I can't just sit down and watch a baseball game. I can't sit down and watch any hockey game. I can't watch any basketball game. Football, the NFL, not even college.
I'm done watching hockey.
Right. The NFL, so am I.
Yeah. I watched my last game on an afternoon. Yeah. I mean, come on.
But the NFL is the only game, the only sport, the only league that it could be, I don't know, Cardinals and Rams on Thursday Night Football, and I'm going to be keeping tabs of it during our show. It's just what but now I think for me, and Tony Defio wrote a great article. This was maybe last week sometime, and it was really epitomized my thoughts on the lack of a preseason. He said Mason Rudolph could have some really good development, and we hope we don't know. We hope we don't see Mason Rudolph this year, unless maybe it's in garbage time and they sit Ben down, or maybe with the expanded playoffs, the Steelers have locked up their seed in the postseason and they don't need to play starters towards the end. I don't know what the situation is. We hope Ben doesn't get hurt or anything like that, but nonetheless, I miss seeing some of these guys and seeing their development. And it's really having me rack my brain thinking, what is it? As a coach? I mean, Dave, you coach the game. How difficult would it be to coach even high school and just go off practice? You have no scrimmages, no, in this case, preseason games. It's extremely difficult.
Yes. Absolutely. It's funny because when I was like the head freshman coach, we only had one scrimmage, but man, did it really tell you something? Because it's just a different attitude, atmosphere. When you get ramped up to go against and line up against someone on the other side that you haven't been seeing every day, it's just something different. So you're absolutely right. It's tough, but you know what? It epitomizes 2020.
Well, next question. How bad, in your all's opinion, we'll start with Bryan, how poor is the product going to be in week 1 because of no preseason and because of the lack of OTAs, minicamp, etc.?
It just depends what team it is, because there are going to be some teams out there that are more professional than others, that are more prepared than others.
Okay,
let's going.
Let me give you a game.
Okay.
Thursday night opener. Houston Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs. How ugly is that game going to be?
It's going to be a shellacking. It really will be. Because I don't think that the Texans are well put together. I don't know. I question the sanity of Bill O'Brien. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I don't think he's a great talent evaluator as much, and a horrible GM. But I don't really think that team has it together. And one thing that I've been saying for the last 2-3 months there is going to be a lot of 4-12 teams and a lot of 12-4 teams, and not as many 8-8 teams. There's going to be less parity this year, Jeff and Dave. And the reason I think that it's going to be because of the preparation. So that's not going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to be 37-13.
I'm going to chime in here, and you say there's going to be, not much parity. I think we are going to get some 8-8 teams, because you're going to get teams that go 2-6 in the beginning of the year and then get it figured out and go 6-2 to finish it up. That's going to be it. So I don't know if they'll ever really be contenders, but I could see some of that. That's about all you're going to get for some of those middle of the road teams. I think you're right with that part of it, Bryan. Oh, now I can't even remember what we were talking about, because Seattle has 2 losses.
Well, I think that ultimately the teams that have I've talked about this before on my morning podcast. The teams that have returning coaches, and continuity in their coaching staff. Yeah. So when you're talking about the Steelers, Tomlin's been there over a decade. They only added 2 new coaches this year. One was a created position, with quarterbacks coach now being its own position, which Matt Canada. And they hired Ike Hilliard, which was a vacancy because Ray Sherman was not ever going to be the long-term wide receiver coach after Dale Drake passed away. Talk about continuity. And then if you have a veteran-laden team, which the Steelers actually do now. I mean, they're young in positions. They're young at receiver, young at running back. With Ben back in the lineup, that offensive line is very veteran-laden. The defense has a lot of veterans on it. I think that the Steelers are set up at least for early season success. If you have teams out there, and we know there are, one which resides kind of in the state of Maryland, that are relying on rookies, you're in trouble. I honestly think you're in a lot of trouble to ask these rookies to step in without organized team activities that were in person and actually moving and getting repetitions physically. But that's just me.
I remember the other thing I was going to say. It was about specifically that Houston-Kansas City game that you asked about. I think Brian's right. I think it's going to be a shellacking, because unless somehow Watson figures out a way that he can throw a 75-yard pass to himself, I don't know what else that offense is going to do. So it just seemed like they were handing it out. They might be able to protect him. I don't know.
Brian, anything dead?
If I could make one more comment
Sure.
about the entire preseason thing, and this is something that we joked about earlier, the Deontay Spencer thing at the end, and talking about the 52nd, 53rd man on the roster and who's going to get cut. We're not going to have to do that this year because we don't know who these guys are.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
But we don't know who the undrafted free agents are.
No,
much.
You're right there.
And so we're losing out on that. And to your point and your question, that I don't think either one of us really answered your question, Jeff, but there's going to be a lot. Even the good teams, they're going to have to gel, and they're going to need the first quarter of the season to gel. That's why I think the first quarter of the season, it's paramount that you go at least 3-1. You cannot have a 1-3, or it's going to be tough to be 2-2 for the start of the season, because you really need to come out fast this year. This is one of the years that you really need to come out quick, because teams are going to start figuring out a little bit more in week 5. And that's to Dave's point, the 2-6 to 6-2 and situations like that. And we've seen the Steelers do that in the past. I remember 2006 when they were 2-6, then ended up 6-2, and then 8-8 records. But what I'm looking at really are for these teams to have those growing pains in the first few weeks of the season. And Pittsburgh seems to have those weeks at the beginning of the season, just the last couple of years, because they didn't have continuity, because Ben Roethlisberger was playing a quarter in the preseason. Yeah. So maybe that evens out, and maybe the reps that he is getting and the team getting together are going to make up for that, because they're really focusing on that in practice, because they know they don't have preseason games.
The Steelers are set up for success early with I think a pretty soft first 4 games. I think that's here. They go to New York, then they host Denver. Help me out, Dave.
Houston, and then go to Tennessee.
Go to Tennessee. Tennessee's the toughest one there.
I think they kind of build a little bit. I don't know. Denver is going to be.
I think Denver's the toughest game there, actually.
Yeah,
it's going to be sloppy early, especially for offenses. And if the Steelers' defense is basically returning everyone, I mean, they should be fine. And so maybe they have to rely on their defense, and you get a couple big plays here or there. And that's something they didn't have last year. The Steelers did not have those couple big plays outside of busted coverages with Deontay Johnson, like against the Dolphins at the end of the first half, where someone just forgot to cover number 18. That doesn't typically happen, but I digress.
Well, week 1 is everything. Because, I mean, come on. Yes, you're on the road, but you're talking about a team with a new head coach, correct?
Second-year quarterback, Daniel
and
Jones.
A second-year quarterback. That's the kind of team that you're like, it might take them a little bit to get started. If the Steelers really are that veteran team, the Giants are the opposite of that. So,
well, I mean, we'll preview that game, obviously, but that's a game where if you can get a lead, take Saquon Barkley out of the game, not physically, but eliminate him running the football, and you put it in Daniel Jones's hands, and that should be right where you want him. Good, Bryan.
You're not on the road the first week. You're at a neutral site game, because there's not a home field. There are no home fans there for the New York Giants. So that's a neutral site.
No, I know that. But at the same time, being able to stay, you still have to travel. Being able to stay at your home, or wherever you stay, that you're comfortable with. I think there's some value to that, don't you? I mean, I know it's not the same.
You're not using your own locker. You're using someone else's. So
but if you all stay, like this team's typically when they travel, stay at a hotel that's near the stadium. They always stay in the same place. You get comfortable there. You get comfortable with the drive. You have a routine. I think there's some value to being home. And I'm curious to see also what the NFL does in terms of crowd noise. They're already talking about these stupid gimmicks about pumping in feeds of fans in their houses. Can you imagine what that would sound like at Heinz Field or MetLife Stadium with Johnny Jimerson, whatever, sitting in his basement yelling something, and it's being echoed over the line? It's going to sound horrible. I'd rather just hear music in between plays.
Wayne Wanghammer.
I was going to say, Jimmy Yenserson down there.
Down there.
But you know what? Hockey didn't do it. I mean, I thought hockey, that pumped-in crowd noise didn't bother me at all. I didn't really notice it.
Hockey, believe it or not, is actually a very quiet game unless something happens.
So I didn't think that was that bad. And back to the fact, the traveling thing that you mentioned, hey, I do my best work in hotels. So
that sounds like another 2 a.m. story.
Yeah, seriously, you say that for Sunday show. This Tales from 2 a.m.
I think that's a good spot for a break, guys.
Yes, it is a good spot for the break. Coming up after this break, if you're on YouTube, stick around. We're not going anywhere. But for our audio listeners, make sure you check out part 2, where we're going to talk about the Ike Taylor interview, and we're going to preview the defensive line. We'll be right back after this. All right, Steeler fans, we are back. Part 2 of the Steelers preview here with Dave Vonghammer Schofield and Bryan Anthony Davis. His name's actually Wang Hammer. We just changed it to a German accent. That's actually your middle name. Like, I was stunned. I want to see your birth certificate.
No, that's not. But it was funny because everyone was trying to guess it. Like the entire staff of Behind the Steel Curtain was trying to guess my middle name. And it was Warhammer is what
I like Warhammer a lot.
Said Warhammer.
That was Jeffrey Benedict.
Well, because I don't know, because Bryan said Wang, and then Jeffrey Benedict said, "Ooh, Wang Hammer," and I'm like, "Yes, I'll take it."
Wasn't that a Peter Gabriel song? Wang Hammer.
Yeah, it was. I think you're right. Which Peter Gabriel is much better solo than with. Anyways, yes. Okay. So let's talk about this Ike Taylor interview. If you haven't checked it out, go and check it out. Whether it's on YouTube, search YouTube, go to youtube.com, BTSC Steelers Radio. Or obviously on our audio platforms, wherever you listen, check it out. I listened to it. I was not able. Thank you, Ike Taylor, for not allowing me to be on the show. Jerk. Anyway.
Hey.
No, he's a friend of the show.
Ike had a good time. He might be in the live chat, man. He already retweeted our interview.
Good. That's awesome. So anyway, so with Ike, I listened to it, and there was a couple things that stood out. I'm going to say what I thought first because you all actually interviewed him. And then you all can maybe say you were impressed with this, that, or the other. When he talked about listen to what the players say, I was like, that is spot on. That is so spot on. And when he used the Joe Hayden reference and Joe Hayden's comments recently about Chase Claypool saying that boy's going to be a problem, that was like the perfect example for what he was trying to say. He said, don't listen to the coaches. Listen to the players. They see these guys every day. And he's right. He is absolutely right. My question for you all, and I'm not doubting what he says, but don't you think some players can kind of do the coach speak thing too? I mean, I feel like Ben Roethlisberger is basically a coach when he talks to the media, and he gives the standard, the status quo answers. Bryan, you think that all players should be trusted with what they say, or do you think that some toe the company line?
Some do toe the company line, but really, when you're looking at the situation with a rookie coming in, and Joe Hayden, the way he's treating him, he's impressed. And when Joe Hayden talks, you really appreciate that. Because I remember two instances. One, week 2 in 2004, when Alan Faneca was really upset that they were turning their season over to a rookie. And I'm sure he would have taken that back later on when he saw what happened when Ben Roethlisberger turned him. He was really upset in that interview. And I remember when Artie Burns came in and Mr. Third and Fifth, Antonio Brown, would not give him any credence whatsoever. It was almost like he was not there to welcome another guy in. And this was a guy that he was victimizing on the other side of the ball. It wasn't somebody to take his job. So Chase Claypool really impressed Joe Hayden. So that's a big thing. So I know some are going to toe the company line, but I like what Ike said about the fact that you could listen to the coaches and you can listen to all these guys because they're going to say the stuff, but the players are going to really tell the truth when it comes to something that they're really passionate about.
Dave, what are your thoughts?
I honestly, there's a great comment that just came up from Logan De Lorenzo that says it's when a player says something without being asked is when you really can know something. Sometimes you really need to hear the question that they're asked and then hear their response. And the way they say it is to know, are they just towing the company line? I mean, it seemed like Joe Hayden was offering up his genuine thoughts about Chase Claypool in that moment. And that was, and I think that was also part of what Ike was getting at, is that, listen to what other players are saying about him, especially the way they said it. It was really good.
Absolutely. And the other thing, and I'll just keep it to 2 so you all have something to talk about as well, is when Ike talked about Dan Rooney. And Bryan, you asked him, and I'm glad you asked him because everyone knows that his relationship with the chairman was very unique. And it was heartfelt. I mean, if you haven't listened to the interview or watched it, I mean, when he said, now I'm gonna be honest, this is just me. When he said, I just called his phone the other day. I mean, my gosh. I mean, Bryan, how long has it been since he passed?
2017.
Yeah. So it's been about 3 years, and he still is just really connected to that man. He realizes how important he was to him. Talked about just some really good, heartfelt stuff. He was a pallbearer at his funeral, which I did not know.
I knew that.
Did you?
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up if he didn't. I was gonna say it, but that was interesting how that worked out because we were running out of time. We had gone over time our time with him. I'm like, he could go at any moment, and I actually sent Bryan a text during the interview. I'm like, ask the Rooney question.
And I was doing it anyway
because it was Bryan. Because Bryan said, when we were talking about, well, what do you want to ask? That was one thing Bryan said he specifically wanted to ask. So I'm going to let Bryan talk about that.
There was a few years ago, like he kept on calling him Pop, and that's what I've heard that before, and I knew he did that. But a few years ago, Dan Rooney came to Ike to ask him to not use a certain word, have the players use a certain derogatory racial word in the locker room, and he was like, Pop, I've got it covered. And I remember seeing the interviewer when he was talking about it. He said, when Dan Rooney comes to you and asks you to do that, you respect him and you go around and you make sure that it's not being said. And so that's, he had a great relationship with Dan Rooney. And when I heard him keep calling him Pop, I started tearing up because it was so deep and so heartfelt. And I thought it was really special. I love that interview today, guys. Not just the fact that we were on it, but just the fact that he knew the team. A team he's not on, but he knew the team he was on, and this team, he knows them inside and out. And everything he said, it was like being inside the locker room and breaking down that wall and us getting to see everything. And he was such a cool guy. Dave made a comment to me. He's like, man, I could have listened to him for hours. And I'm like, I'm with you. I would have. And we asked him at the end of the interview, hey, can we hang out with you at the Super Bowl? I was actually I was just saying, hey, you're going to come on the show again before the Super Bowl. That's what I meant. And he was like, yeah, I'll hang out with you guys.
Like, I'm down here in Tampa. Yeah.
So, Jeff, you're not invited.
No, I'll show up and he won't be able to make it. That's
Jeff, we're going to hear about that for forever.
Oh, you weren't saying that yesterday, Bryan.
Yes, I was.
Dave, go ahead.
Well, really enjoyed that part of the interview. The whole interview, my biggest thing is I was just hoping Bryan and I just stay out of his way. Don't do the thing where some people ask a question and then not really let him answer. We just let him talk. Let him talk to Steelers Nation. So we hope we did a good job of that for you guys, that we just let him go and let him share and just ask a question and really just have him answer it. I like how he said, when we were asking him to make comparisons of current Steeler players to maybe people he played against or something, the only thing he could think of for Chase Claypool was if LeBron James played football.
Yeah, I heard that.
I thought that was interesting.
Well, Claypool is a physical specimen. I mean, you don't see guys that are 6'4", 230 pounds that run a 4.40 very often. I mean, you could say Plaxico Burress, but they're not built the same way. Plaxico was like that long. I mean, he was a big guy, but he was just long and lean. Chase Claypool was built like a tight end, but he's just so much more athletic. But I thought the Ike Taylor interview, if you have not listened, and yes, we are cross-promoting, but this is not just some shameless plug. Listen to it. It's 30 minutes that are well worth your time, and you really get a glimpse into the player's perspective. I loved what he said about Troy and how they came in together and they left together. And the reason why you can't compare this secondary to their secondary was because they had that secondary that was together forever. You kind of forgot. I forgot that, you forget that Polamalu and Taylor came in at the same time. You forget that Deshae was there forever. You forget that Tyrone Carter was there for a long time. And he brought up Ricardo Coakley. I like to forget that guy, but still he brought him up and that's fine. But great interview, guys. Good job.
Thank you. Last thing I want to say is he kept on saying Yinzer and Pittsburgh through and through. And I believe that his last words were on the interview were Yinzer forever, I believe. Yeah. And so that's something that he is just really proud of. He's proud of being drafted and staying here his entire career. So when you talk about guys that are, I don't know if he was, other teams were trying to throw money at him, but he seems like a guy that would take less to stay in Pittsburgh because of the culture and appreciated the culture. And that's one of the things that I wanted to ask him about. And we did when we talked about, playing in Pittsburgh and Dan Rooney.
Everything okay?
You're really excited about that, weren't you, Bryan?
I dropped my drink.
That's
okay. All right. Dave, anything to add about the interview? Or do you already move on?
Hey, I'll go listen to it. We can sit here. We can sit here and talk about it a bunch. The best thing for y'all to do is just go listen to it. Listen to Ike talk.
There you go. All right. So now is when we start the preview section of the show. And this is something that was going on well before I came back to Behind the Steel Curtain. And that is we are highlighting a group and we're talking about which position or which player at that position is considered irreplaceable. And you actually asked Ike Taylor this question, one of you did, about the defensive line, which is where we
asked about the whole defense.
Oh, and he just chose this player from the defensive line.
From the defensive line.
Okay, so right off the bat, were you all thinking the same player? Because he said Cam Heyward. Were you all agreeing, obviously, but did you think of anyone else for the show? Dave, we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, for the Ike interview, you're like, well, do you go with Minkah Fitzpatrick? Do you go with TJ Watt? But you go with the captain.
He didn't hesitate either.
No.
He said Cam.
No. Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to defensive line, I mean, the Steelers have had to go without Tuitt for part of the season every year so far, other than his rookie year when he wasn't even starting right off the bat. So they've kind of learned how to play without him. But I think that this whole defense suffers without Cam Heyward. I think the Steelers are going to do everything they can to keep him in Pittsburgh beyond this year. I don't know that it's going to happen before this year. I think that they might have to have a serious talk and say, we want to give you a longer contract, but we have to make sure we know what the salary cap is. You know what I'm saying? It might take something like that, but if not, franchise tag the man, please. He's got to play on with the Steelers past 2020. But that's one guy. Yes, and the Steelers lost him. Did they lose him in that game to Dallas?
Yes, in that Dallas game in 2016.
Yes, and then he missed the rest of that season. And I mean, the defense still, they stepped it up in his absence, but still, he's the guy.
How about you, Bryan?
So the name of this episode, the title is, does the Steelers defensive line live or die with Cam Heyward? And the reason we put that title out there is because I'm wondering, without the pressure that you're getting from the defensive line and mainly Cam Heyward, if things fall apart on the other end. I just think he is so critical, and I think he's so irreplaceable to this team right now. Now, he's the heart of this team. Now, the superstars of this defense are Minkah, Devin Bush in waiting, and TJ Watt. But the heart is definitely Cam Heyward. Now, Dave just brought up an awesome point. They did well without him, and they went to the AFC Championship game, but their defensive backs became suspect towards the end of that season. And without Cam Heyward back there, up front, I'm wondering if this stellar secondary that we have here suffers a little bit more if he's not in there. So I just think this is a guy that you cannot replace right now.
I'm gonna pull a Dave Schofield here, and I'm gonna answer this way.
Wait, Dave Wanghammer.
Dave Wanghammer here. I'm gonna pull a Wanghammer. So when you're talking about the defensive front, you can't compare it to past seasons, at least not the last four. I'll tell you why. If you lose Heyward in the last 4 years, you had a versatile player like Javon Hargrave that can come in and really fill in, and you miss that player, but it's not a huge drop-off. We'll put it that way. Stephon Tuitt, in my opinion, when he's healthy, is equally as disruptive as Cam Heyward is.
Absolutely.
And so everyone says Batman and Robin. No, because everyone knows that Robin is lesser than Batman. It's like Batman and Superman, or Superman and whatever other weird comic book you guys read. So
wow, I'm impressed. Jeff knows those guys' names.
The Wonder Twins. No,
but still,
the Wonder
I
Twin
feel
powers activate.
You know, he
Without-
Googled superheroes right before this.
I have my phone right
It's the
here.
guy with
I
the
just
blue and the red cape.
Seriously though, if you lose this year, if you lose Tuitt or Heyward to injury long term, it's a huge drop off. Aluwalu's great, but he's not Hargrave. Okay. If you lose, they just don't have the depth that they do have there anymore. And that's a problem. Isaiah Buggs, I don't know, hasn't proven himself yet on the field, just seen a little bit. So I want to say, yeah, Cam, but I also want to say, I think Tuitt's just as important and just as irreplaceable. That's just me.
It's going to be harder this year because the Steelers still don't know what they have with Chris Wormley.
That's true. I always forget about him.
They have him.
Talk to him.
He's a little bit dinged up to start off with training camp. Lower body injury, I think is what they said. But I mean, so if he steps up, then that's great, and you get that better rotation. But it's not as solid as it has been in years past, like you said, Jeff. I agree with that.
I mean, Tuitt, did you all listen to that podcast I did about how he's the Superman the defense needs?
Mm-hmm.
Brian,
I did.
I know
Brian's not a team player.
Brian didn't know. He's too busy
I'm
listening
a podcast producer now. I have to listen.
He's
to
the PP.
He's
the double P. Yes.
So for me, like I talked about in 2019, you look at his stats for just 6 games, they were out of this world for a defensive lineman.
They were.
He had like 3.5 sacks in 6 games. If he would have stayed healthy last year, he was so dominant. So I know Tuitt because he was interviewed this week. He's really chomping at the bit to get out there and probably hit someone. I always think back to the hit he had. I don't remember the Browns quarterback that it was, but he had rushed the passer, got pushed up the arc, coiled back, and it was McCown. That's who it was when McCown was quarterback. And he hit the quarterback from the blind side so hard. You know what it reminded me of? When you see like the videos of the killer whale coming out of the water and eating the seal and stuff. That's what just like engulfing it. It was Tuitt is, I think, one of the most underrated players on the defense because he's hurt. We know his injury history, but I don't think people give Tuitt the credit he deserves. That's just me.
Yeah.
So anything else about the defensive line y'all want to discuss?
No, I mean, we'll see how it pans out. I mean, that's why we want to watch Steelers football. Come on, get here quickly.
And watch out for Savon Walker. I think that guy's going to have a shot to make this team.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. So we know the locks to make the team: Tuitt, Heyward, Aluwalu, and you say Buggs, right? I would say Buggs.
I think Buggs is a lock.
Wormley, you don't trade for him.
Okay, so Wormley is 5. How many are they keeping? Dave, what did we say? 6?
6. Yeah, you keep McCullers just because of the battle. I think they do. No, because they're going to want someone that big for goal line. The only way it's not McCullers is if Calvin Taylor, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Kentucky, who is 6'9", 310 pounds, unless he outplays Big Dan, who Big Dan did show up, slimmed down a little bit. They've been saying.
We've been saying that for 4 years.
So, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to judge this because we're not going to have a preseason to do it.
Brian,
you got Mondu.
No love for Savon.
He's a guy. Here's the problem with him. He's a little small. He's kind of like a Mondu. He's a little small for defensive line, but he's too big for outside linebacker. So
interesting.
That's why he was a good XFLer, because being that next level down, he could really excel there.
He'll make the practice squad at least.
Well, but hold on a second, because if the Steelers don't, I've said this for a long time now, they don't need a pure nose tackle anymore.
No, they don't.
And even when I interviewed Dale Lally, when the 2 months I was gone, he said they run their base defense like 25% of the time. That you don't need Casey Hampton. I love Casey Hampton, but you don't need Casey Hampton anymore. Casey Hamptons don't really exist, at least not for Pittsburgh. No. So to me, Dan McCullers is like a waste. It's a waste of a roster spot. if this Savon Walker, is that his name?
Yeah.
Savon.
And he was getting
Brian
was getting props in the live chat for saying his name properly. I actually informed Bryan and Michael Beck that was the correct way to say it. Is Savon.
Oh, Dave wants his props.
I want my credit.
Make sure you give the props. But
Von
so
Homer.
Wanghammer.
It'd definitely been a Wanghammer right now.
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying, like, when you think about that sixth spot on the defensive line, shoot, give me some versatility instead of just a guy that's just going to play 10 to 15 snaps a game, and some of them are going to be special teams on the field goal block team, So we'll see.
I personally, when it comes to McCullers, he's got to be all the way out for him to be out, in my opinion, because based on that he's played for the Steelers, 6 seasons now?
Too many, I know that. With there being no preseason, the Steelers would not even want to have to want him on the practice squad, because these other guys like Savon Walker, like Calvin Taylor, like Henry Mondu, like Carlos Davis, who we haven't even talked about, Bryan's son. Oh, your son.
These are guys that you are probably easier to get to the practice squad because no one can see anything on them. And why are they going to want to sign them to their 53 when they have no tape on what they can do in the NFL? So these are, they just got to, to me, McCullers would have to be all the way out. I don't even see McCullers being one of those special guys that they signed to the practice squad since you're allowed 6 veterans this year. I think he's on the active or nothing.
Bryan,
I mean, what do you see your son doing? Is he giving you any inside information, Carlos?
I think he's a practice squad guy. I mean, 7th rounder.
He's raw too.
Yeah, there's a lot on that. There's a lot of room on the practice squad. There's a lot of talent on that defensive line, and we haven't been able to say that for a while. They can go a lot of places with that number 6 guy. I still don't think it's McCullers.
Yeah.
I pay credence to what Dave said about goal line situations and keeping them in there. I just don't know why at this point.
I have to share this little secret. It's not a secret, but it's something that happens behind the scenes that only if you're Dave or myself as an editor for the site would see. Jeffrey Benedict, who's on our Wednesday show and the Beck and Black show with Michael Beck, he's really funny in his own way. And so I remember he was doing a film room breakdown of every single rookie. And so Jeffrey will sometimes, at the bottom is where you can enter the tweet when the story is published. His tweet, sometimes, because he has like 10 followers on Twitter, so he just writes the craziest stuff. He wrote, Carlos Davis's tape makes me want to gouge my eyes out, or something to that effect. Once he did a breakdown of Paxton Lynch on whether Paxton Lynch is a viable backup, and he wrote, Paxton Lynch is not good at football.
Yeah, I remember also when Jeffrey announced to us he was excited that he hit double-digit Twitter followers.
That's right. He finally got to double digits. And some of them were Ravens fans that hate him because he wrote the article about the Steelers being able to beat the Ravens this year.
Yeah. Oh, my. It's good stuff.
It's just editor humor, I guess. Okay. Go ahead. What? Oh, trivia. Do we have trivia?
Oh, I've got trivia.
Oh, gosh. Can we get it done in 8 minutes so we can still answer some questions?
Oh, yes. We should. Well, I don't know. It depends on how good you guys are, because you're going to have to answer 8 things.
Holy cow.
Because it's the defensive line. Now, this is according to Pro Football Reference, because sometimes they call guys defensive linemen that aren't, because I said defensive linemen, defensive tackles, defensive ends. For some reason, Anthony Chickala was on this list. I'm like, get out of here. The question was, people don't realize how well the Steelers do at drafting their own defensive linemen. And since sacks became a stat, an individual stat in 1982, the Steelers have, I think it's 55 players, or in the 50s, on the defensive line that have registered a sack. I'm like, one's no big deal. I was looking at 5 or more sacks as a Steeler. There are only 8 players not drafted by the Steelers to get 5 or more sacks that were defensive linemen. Can you name them?
Kimo
von Oelhoffen, he was second, 20.5 sacks. He was a 6th rounder from Cincinnati.
Ray Seals and Donald Evans.
Ray Seals and Donald Evans. Those are the next two, 15.5 and 14.5. Seals was undrafted and played for Tampa. And Evans was a second-round pick of the Rams. Very good.
Seals didn't even go to college. He didn't.
Yep.
Drafted out of high school.
Yep.
Football in Syracuse, yeah.
So, all right, so that's 3.
Not drafted by
Two of them went straight to the Steelers, but they were undrafted. In fact, the one who has the most sacks as a defensive lineman was undrafted. Right when sacks started to become a statistic.
Gerald Williams.
It was not Gerald Williams. Gerald Williams, he was on here somewhere, but he was
He was drafted.
yes, I think so. Because I looked at him.
Edmund Nelson was drafted too, I believe.
Was it Dick Shiner, was it?
No. Come on. He was the Steeler sack leader for a long time with 59.
All right. I don't know. We only have 5 minutes left. A lot of people are asking good questions.
1982.
Undrafted in 1982. Played from 82 to 91 for the Steelers.
Brian,
Keith Willis?
Keith Willis.
He was
Nice.
undrafted. Okay.
He was undrafted. Because it was Keith Gary that was drafted that year.
1982, but didn't show up until
Yep.
84.
Until yeah. Okay.
is that it?
So that's 4 of them.
How many are there?
There were 8. You've got to get the current one. Come
God
on.
bless America. The current one? Tyson Alualu?
Tyson Alualu has 5 sacks.
Tyson, yeah.
And there's another one who was undrafted by the Steelers but played with them first, still in the league. Would love to get him back. But he's still wearing green, as far as I know.
Steve McClendon.
Steve McClendon had 5 sacks. So I'm just going to give you the other 2.
Yes, please.
Or I could give you the years. 2004 to 2009 had 9 sacks. Travis Kirchke.
Kirschke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last one. Why can't I read my handwriting? Okay, I can't read my handwriting. 1997 to 1999, only those 3 seasons, but had 7.5 sacks. How about Nolan Harrison?
From the Raiders. Yeah. I would have never come up with Nolan.
Yeah.
Never would have guessed that, and I'm an idiot. That's fine. Okay.
No, but that's crazy that all these guys with all these sacks off the defensive line, they drafted them all. They're all Steeler draft picks. So that's people say they draft good wide receivers. They do well when they draft defensive linemen, especially early.
All right. We rarely have time for questions. We have 3 minutes left. Here we go. Andrew Wilbur says, what is more likely? Canada becomes the next OC or Terrell Austin becomes the next DC? What do you think, Brian?
Canada.
Dave?
I don't think either of them gets either job.
Ooh, I'm going to go with Canada. All right. Will James Conner, this is from John Trent, will James Conner finish the season as the starting running back? Brian, we'll stick with the rotation.
Unfortunately, no.
Dave?
I'm going to say yes, but I don't know that he will have quite as much of a workload by the end of the season, that they'll be giving it more to Snell.
I think he's going to stay healthy. Mark Tobin, will the Steelers split with the Ravens and sweep Ravens and Browns and sweep the Bungles? How do you see the AFC North playing out? Brian?
I have them splitting with both the Ravens and Browns and beating the Bengals twice. So yes.
Which is exactly so. Yes. I think I haven't beat the Browns twice just because I hate them.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I think they beat the Browns twice, beat the Bengals twice, split with the Ravens. Just Me says, which rookie do you think will start? It's a tough one. Go ahead, Brian.
None.
Dave?
None for at least the first 8 games.
Yeah, I mean, then you're going with?
Let's say Bud gets dinged up and Highsmith gets a start.
You think Highsmith will get a start over Ola or Tuzar?
If it's 8 games into the season, if it's later on.
Best chance for a start, I think, is Claypool. If it's just,
Probably.
hey, you're
that's
out
the
there.
obvious choice. I was trying to go out on a limb.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, my gosh. This live chat is just bouncing all over the place.
Can I bring up one?
Yeah, go for it.
Jeffrey Benedict. Well, everyone start calling James Washington Grandpa. That was great. That's in reference to the interview today.
The grandpa strength.
He says he's got country strength, and then at the end he said grandpa strength. I liked it.
Now Ezra has a great question. Which player would you rather play a full season, Connor or Tuitt? That's a good question.
Tuitt.
I'm going Tuitt because I think the Steelers have more options at running back than they do onto the defensive line for sure.
Absolutely.
I agree. Now there's a question that was put in here. Here we go. Donald Nolan. This is maybe one for you, Dave, for an article maybe this weekend.
I saw that. Yeah. How many of them?
How many teams have new head coaches that the Steelers play this year? Well, we know the Giants do.
Yes.
Joe Judge.
And the Washington football team, and news about him today with his health. Ron Rivera.
True. Prayers go out to him.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
He has a type of lymphatic cancer, but they said it's early on and treatable. But that's scary stuff nonetheless. Is there anyone else? I mean everyone else. Well, the Cowboys. The Cowboys.
McCarthy and
Mike McCarthy in Dallas.
Stefanski. What is it? It's Kevin Stefanski. I can't pronounce his name.
Cleveland.
In Cleveland.
And then they're matched up.
That happened so long ago. I almost forget that they haven't played any games since he was hired.
Then they're matched up with the AFC South. So you're talking Jacksonville, no. Houston, no. Tennessee, no.
And Indy, no.
That might be it.
And the Eagles keep their coach, and who am I missing in the NFC
East?
NFC East, because Washington has a new coach, Dallas has a new coach, and
Giants have a new coach.
So yeah, there's three coaches there.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. Interesting stat. Good show, guys.
Yeah.
Good show. Glad that Wang Hammer could join us and get back to the three amigos and all that good stuff. So, guys, anything for the good of the order before we call it a show?
Make sure you're checking out behind the steelcurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Lots of training camp coverage. Make sure you're coming in.
Important, I'm getting a haircut, buddy.
Bryan, as the PP, do you want to say anything?
Hey, no, thank you. And, keep on downloading and keep on being our Steeler family. Thank you.
He's not the best color man in the league for nothing, folks. All right. We will see you next week for another episode of the Steelers preview. 1 week closer to real football. Can't wait. Take it easy, everyone. See ya.